They judged her by her clothes, mocked her for looking too poor to belong. But when her true identity was revealed, the entire hotel froze in shame. What started as humiliation turned into one of the most powerful lessons on dignity, respect, and karma. For more real stories like this, subscribe to Simply Stories. Camilla had always believed that love was worth more than wealth. She was never drawn to the glittering lights, diamond necklaces, or luxury cars that surrounded her husband's world. She had fallen for the man beneath the tailored suits, the one who laughed easily, who remembered how she took her coffee, and who made her feel seen in a world obsessed with appearances. So, when her husband left for a business trip abroad, she didn't miss the luxury of their mansion. She missed him. His warmth, his presence, his laugh echoing through quiet halls. That's why, one crisp morning, she decided to do something she hadn't done before: surprise him at one of his own hotels, the Grand Meridian. She wanted to remind him that love didn't need reservations or status, just presence. After a long, exhausting flight, Camilla finally arrived at the entrance of the Grand Meridian. She was dressed comfortably, worn jeans, a soft cardigan, and sneakers that had carried her through many ordinary days. There was nothing glamorous about her, nothing that screamed wealth. Yet there was grace in her simplicity. The kind that comes from knowing your worth isn't measured by designer labels. But in that towering marble lobby filled with polished floors, chandelier lights, and people dressed in tailored perfection, she looked like a stranger. From the moment she walked in, silence seemed to follow her. Conversations paused, eyes turned, and judgment whispered through every glance. The doorman hesitated, his hand halfway to the handle before deciding she didn't look like the kind of guest who needed help. The receptionist behind the counter looked up, then immediately looked back down with a roll of her eyes, muttering something under her breath. A few guests sitting in the lounge leaned in and whispered as they looked her up and down, snickering quietly. Still, Camilla smiled softly, brushing off the unease. She approached the reception desk with kindness in her voice. "Good afternoon. I have a reservation under Camilla Rodriguez," she said. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, barely looked at her. Her tone was sharp, almost mechanical. "Name again?" she asked, fingers tapping lazily on the keyboard. Camilla repeated it patiently. Jessica's eyebrows furrowed, then her lips curved into a smirk. Doesn't seem like we have you here. Are you sure you didn't book the Meridian Motel down the street?" she said mockingly. Camilla blinked in confusion but maintained her composure. "No, I'm sure it's this one. I even have the confirmation email," she replied, holding out her phone. Jessica took one glance and scoffed. "This could be photoshopped," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. A few chuckles rippled through the lobby. Camilla felt her chest tighten. "I assure you it's real. My husband made the booking himself, Adrian Rodriguez." The moment she said that name, her husband's name, the atmosphere changed. Jessica's laughter burst out instantly, joined by the snickers of another staff member standing nearby. "You?" Jessica said, barely containing her laughter. "You're saying you're married to Adrian Rodriguez, the owner of this hotel?" Soon, the manager appeared. Patricia, a tall woman with sharp heels and sharper eyes. She walked over with an air of authority, her perfume trailing behind her like arrogance in a bottle. She looked Camilla up and down with a judgmental smirk. "Is there a problem here?" she asked Jessica. The receptionist quickly summarized the situation, making sure to emphasize the part where Camilla claimed to be the owner's wife. Patricia's expression tightened with disbelief. "Are you sure you can afford our rooms, ma'am?" she said, stressing the last word with mock politeness. "Perhaps you meant to book at the motel on 5th Street. They're much more in your range." For a moment, Camilla's throat burned with humiliation, but she refused to let them see her crumble. "I don't appreciate being spoken to this way," she said softly but firmly. "Just check again, please." Patricia crossed her arms and nodded to Jessica. "Fine, try her card," she said. Camilla handed over her credit card. But the moment Jessica swiped it, the machine beeped and flashed, "Error." She tried again. Another error. Jessica's smirk returned like a weapon. "Declined," she announced loudly. "Typical." Patricia shook her head in false pity. "I'm afraid we can't have people attempting to scam our staff," she said coldly. "Security!" Two guards appeared almost instantly. Their heavy boots echoed on the marble floor as they approached. Patricia pointed toward Camilla as if identifying a criminal. "Escort this woman out." Gasps and murmurs filled the lobby. Some guests took out their phones, recording the scene as the guards grabbed Camilla roughly by the arms. Her phone fell to the floor, screen cracking as it hit the tiles. "Please, there must be a mistake," she pleaded, her voice trembling, but no one listened. Her simple cardigan was wrinkled where the guards' hands clutched it, and the quiet humiliation stung more than any bruise could. The laughter, the whispers, the cameras, everything blurred together until Camilla could barely breathe. But just as her voice began to break under their cruelty, a commanding voice echoed across the lobby. "What in the world is going on here?" The guards froze. The staff turned toward the grand staircase. And standing there, fresh from a business trip, suitcase in hand, was Adrian Rodriguez himself, the billionaire hotel owner and Camilla's husband. The air went still. Patricia's confident smirk vanished instantly, replaced by sheer panic. Jessica's face turned white as a sheet. Camilla stood motionless, her eyes wide and teary, realizing that her husband had walked in at the very moment the truth was about to unfold. And every cruel soul in that lobby was about to face a reckoning they would never forget. Camilla's knees scraped against the polished marble as the guards dragged her without mercy. The sound of her backpack hitting the floor echoed through the vast, glittering lobby. Her things spilled everywhere. Her phone, a small notebook, a crumpled boarding pass, and a family photo that slid across the cold tiles like a piece of her shattered pride. One of the guards didn't even bother to look down before stepping on it. The humiliation was sharp, cutting deeper than any physical pain. Every pair of eyes in that lobby seemed to pierce her with judgment. A few guests whispered, pretending to pity her, but the corners of their mouths curled in amusement. The manager, Patricia, stood tall with crossed arms, her voice slicing through the air like a whip. "Throw her things in the trash where they belong," she ordered, her tone dripping with disdain. Her words weren't just cruel, they were meant to destroy whatever little dignity Camilla had left. The bellboy obeyed, smirking as he kicked Camilla's wallet aside, the small sound of it skidding across the marble followed by a burst of laughter from the staff. Someone pulled out their phone to record, chuckling as if they were capturing a comedy scene. Camilla's breath trembled. She tried to collect her things, but one of the guards kicked the photo away from her hand. "Please, please stop," she whispered, her voice breaking, but her plea only fueled their cruelty. "We've seen your type before," one guard sneered, his tone mocking and full of arrogance. "People like you walk in here thinking you can blend in with luxury, but you don't belong here." Her tears fell silently, streaking her face as she tried to stand, but they shoved her back down. The crowd watched. Some out of curiosity, some out of indifference. No one out of courage. Patricia's phone buzzed in her hand, but she ignored it, too absorbed in her performance of superiority. "Escort her out now," she barked again. "I don't want to see this nonsense in my lobby." Then, suddenly, the sharp ding of an elevator echoed through the air. The sound sliced through the noise like fate interrupting cruelty itself. Everyone turned instinctively toward the elevator doors as they slowly slid open. From inside stepped a tall man in a charcoal gray suit, holding a briefcase in one hand, his posture radiating quiet authority. His expression at first was calm, weary from travel, until his gaze fell on the chaos before him. His brows furrowed, eyes narrowing as he took in the sight. His wife, trembling on the floor, her belongings scattered, the guards standing over her, and the staff frozen mid-laughter. For a heartbeat, confusion flickered across his face. Then realization struck. "Stop!" His voice boomed across the lobby with a thunder that silenced everything. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lowered. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade. Every smirk vanished instantly as the man's command echoed off the marble walls. Adrian Rodriguez, the billionaire owner of the Grand Meridian, was no longer the calm businessman everyone admired. He was a storm ready to destroy anyone who had dared to touch the woman he loved. The guards froze like statues. Patricia's confident smirk melted into horror as Adrian stormed forward, his polished shoes hitting the marble in sharp, echoing steps. His eyes, cold and blazing with fury, locked on Camilla. She was shaking, tears still streaming, her hair disheveled, her cardigan torn slightly at the shoulder. He dropped his briefcase without a second thought and rushed to her. "Release her. Now," he ordered, his voice low but lethal. The guards let go instantly, their hands shooting into the air as if the weight of their guilt burned through their palms. Camilla stumbled forward, and Adrian caught her in his arms. She clung to him, her fingers gripping his jacket like a lifeline. He held her close, one hand on the back of her head, whispering softly, "It's okay, I'm here." But his eyes, those dark, burning eyes, never left the staff. Fury radiated from him in waves, making the air itself feel heavy. Patricia tried to step forward, her hands shaking. "Mr. Rodriguez, I didn't know," she began, but her words tangled in fear. Adrian turned his head slowly, his gaze slicing through her excuses before she could finish. "Didn't know," he repeated quietly, each word colder than the last. "You didn't care to know." He gestured toward Camilla's scattered belongings. "You judged my wife because of her clothes. You mocked her. You humiliated her. And you put your hands on her." The silence in the lobby was absolute. No one dared to move. Even the security guards looked pale, their earlier bravado gone. The guests who had been filming now hid their phones, pretending not to have seen anything. Adrian's voice grew sharper, his tone cutting through the air like steel. "Is this what my hotel stands for? Humiliating guests? Mocking women because they don't dress like you? Is this how you treat people who walk through my doors?" Patricia's lip quivered. "Sir, please, it was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Adrian snapped, stepping closer until his shadow fell over her. "You called my wife a fraud. You ordered her thrown out. You made a spectacle out of her pain." He looked around, addressing everyone in the lobby. Every single person who laughed, who filmed, who said nothing. "You're part of this disgrace." Camilla held onto him tighter, her eyes wide as she watched the man she loved transform into her defender. The same calm husband she'd missed so deeply now stood like a wall between her and the cruelty she'd endured. Adrian's voice softened only for her. "You don't have to say a word," he murmured. "I saw everything I needed to." Then, turning back to Patricia, his tone turned to ice. "Get out of my hotel. You're done." The color drained from Patricia's face. "Sir, please," I said, "get out." The words echoed through the marble halls like a verdict. No one clapped, no one cheered. They were too stunned, too guilty. The guards lowered their heads. The receptionist trembled, her mascara smudging as she realized the depth of what they'd done. Adrian knelt to pick up Camilla's photo, the one they'd stepped on. He brushed it clean with trembling hands, then handed it back to her gently. "Let's go upstairs," he said softly. "You're safe now." As they walked toward the elevator, together, the same crowd that had once mocked her now parted in silence. Not a single person dared to meet her eyes. The doors closed behind them, and in that heavy, stunned quiet, every staff member knew this was only the beginning of the reckoning. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing Camilla and Adrian away from the murmuring crowd below. She clung to him, her tears soaking into his suit jacket, while he held her tighter, his mind replaying every second of what he had just witnessed. The sight of her being dragged across his hotel's marble floor would haunt him for a long time. His jaw clenched, his voice steady but trembling with restrained fury as he whispered, "They will never do this to anyone again." Camilla tried to speak, her voice fragile, barely audible. I didn't want to cause a scene," she said through tears. "I just wanted to see you." Her words broke his heart in a way nothing else could. "You did nothing wrong," he told her firmly. "They did." He reached for his phone and dialed his regional director, Mr. Harper, a man known for his efficiency and loyalty. Get to the Grand Meridian, now, Adrian ordered. Emergency review. Bring access to all surveillance footage. His tone left no room for questions. Within minutes, the elevator doors reopened and the couple stepped back into the lobby. The once bustling space had gone eerily quiet. No one dared to meet Adrian's gaze. The staff stood frozen, unsure whether to hide or apologize. Adrian guided Camilla to a chair near the reception, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Stay here, love," he said softly. "I need you to see that justice still exists." When Mr. Harper arrived, his usually calm demeanor broke at the sight of his furious employer. Adrian greeted him with a nod, his voice low but firm. "Pull the footage from the last 30 minutes, he said. Harper immediately instructed the IT technician to access the camera system. Within seconds, the giant screen in the staff room flickered to life, playing the footage from the moment Camilla entered the hotel. Adrian, Harper, and a few senior witnesses stood in silence as the truth unfolded. Frame by frame, the ugly reality played out. Jessica's dismissive smirk when Camilla spoke, Patricia's mocking words dripping with arrogance, the guards grabbing her arms, the bellboy kicking her belongings, and Sophia, the young hostess, standing in the corner filming everything on her phone instead of stopping it. Every cruel laugh, every roll of the eyes, every shove was captured in perfect clarity. When the video ended, the room was thick with shame. Harper's face turned pale. "My God," he muttered, "this is inexcusable." Adrian didn't respond. He simply exhaled slowly, then turned to Harper. His voice, though calm, carried a weight that made even the air feel heavy. "Gather them," he said. "All of them. Now." Word spread quickly through the hotel. Within minutes, the same employees, who had laughed at Camilla, now stood lined up in front of Adrian, trembling. Patricia stood in front, her face pale and lips trembling. Jessica clutched a tissue, tears streaking down her heavy makeup. The guards, Frank and Tony, kept their eyes on the floor, while Ben, the bellboy, nervously fidgeted with his cap. Sophia stood off to the side, her phone still in her hand, the same phone she had used to record Camilla's humiliation. Guests gathered nearby, whispering, sensing that something monumental was about to happen. Adrian faced them, his expression unreadable. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady and commanding. "I built this company with one rule: respect. Not for money, not for marble floors, not for image, but for people, for human dignity. And today, you've proven that you've forgotten everything this place stands for." His words cut through them like glass. Patricia tried to find her voice first. "Mr. Rodriguez, please. I've served this hotel for 12 years, she stammered. "I made a mistake, but—" Adrian turned to her, his eyes cold. 12 years, he repeated quietly. 12 years to learn what respect looks like. 12 years to understand that power without compassion is worth nothing. You had 12 years to learn decency. And you failed." He motioned to Harper. "Effective immediately, Patricia Gomez is terminated from all positions within Meridian Hotels. Escort her out." Patricia's knees buckled slightly. "Please, sir." She tried again, but Harper signaled to security, who gently but firmly led her toward the exit. The same doors that had witnessed her cruel laughter now saw her leave in disgrace. Jessica was next. She was crying openly, her mascara streaked, her voice trembling. "Sir, I didn't mean to. I was just following Patricia's lead," she pleaded. Adrian's gaze hardened. "Following cruelty doesn't absolve you from it. You had a choice to show kindness. You chose mockery." Jessica's sobs filled the air as Harper called for her escort as well. Frank, one of the guards, tried to defend himself. "We were only doing what the manager told us," he said, his voice low. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Then you followed orders that violated basic humanity. That's not loyalty. That's cowardice." His words struck like thunder. "You don't belong here. The guards lowered their heads as security led them away. The bellboy, Ben, trembled visibly. "I just kicked the wallet, sir. I didn't—" Adrian interrupted. "You kicked a woman's dignity. Does that sound small to you?" Ben had no answer. He too was escorted out, shame written across his face. Finally, Adrian turned to Sophia, the youngest of them all, who stood trembling with tears brimming in her eyes. "And you," he said quietly. "You watched it all. You filmed her pain." "Why?" Sophia's voice cracked. "I thought it would go viral," she whispered. Adrian's face turned ashen with disbelief. "Viral?" he repeated softly, shaking his head. "You thought her humiliation was content." He looked around at the rest of the staff, his voice rising just enough for everyone to hear. "This is what happens when decency is replaced by ego, when people forget that every human being who walks through these doors deserves respect." One by one, they were all escorted out through the same doors they had forced Camilla toward earlier. The irony was heavy, poetic, almost divine. The same guests who had watched her humiliation now watched their downfall. Cameras that had once filmed cruelty now captured justice. As the last of them left, Adrian turned to Harper. "Replace every one of them," he said. "Hire people who understand compassion before luxury." Then he turned to Camilla, who had been watching quietly from her chair, her hands clasped together. "It's over," he said softly. "No one will ever treat you like that again. Not here. Not anywhere." The lobby stood silent for a long time after. The same marble floors that had reflected shame now shimmered under the weight of justice, and in that silence everyone understood. Respect, once broken, can destroy empires. But when restored, it rebuilds something far greater: dignity. When the elevator doors closed behind them, the noise of the lobby faded, replaced by the soft hum of the rising lift. Camilla's tears finally spilled over, but they were no longer the tears of humiliation. They were the tears of release, of relief, of knowing that the truth had finally been seen. Adrian held her close, one hand resting gently on her back, the other brushing her hair away from her face. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice trembling with both love and guilt. "I'm so sorry this happened." She shook her head slowly, her face pressed against his chest. "You have nothing to be sorry for," she said softly. "They showed who they are, and now everyone will know." Later that evening, back in their suite, Adrian watched her quietly as she sat by the window. The city lights shimmered below, their reflections dancing on the glass like tiny fires. Camilla looked thoughtful, not broken, stronger than before, though still weary from the ordeal. Adrian approached her gently, taking her hand. "Maybe," he began carefully, "maybe next time, you should tell me before you come to one of the hotels. Or maybe dress a little differently, just to avoid situations like this." She turned to face him, her expression calm but firm. "No, Adria," she said. "I won't change who I am because others can't see beyond appearances." Her voice carried quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. "If I start pretending, then I let them win. I'm not ashamed of being simple. I'm ashamed of the world for making kindness a luxury." Adrian smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. "You're right," he whispered. "You've always been right." What neither of them knew was that while justice was being served inside the hotel, the world outside had already started watching. Guests who had recorded the scene earlier began uploading their videos. Within hours, those clips spread across every major social media platform. Millions watched as a woman in jeans and a cardigan was mocked, grabbed, and thrown out of her own husband's hotel, only for the truth to explode moments later. The hashtag, Justice for Camilla, flooded timelines. People from all over the world began sharing their own experiences of classism and mistreatment. News outlets picked up the story before morning. Headlines read, "Billionaire's wife humiliated by her own staff, the lesson that shook the industry." But the tone wasn't scandalous. It was reflective. Talk shows discussed how society often judges worth by wealth and appearance. Hospitality organizations faced pressure to review their staff training policies. And in the middle of it all stood Camilla, humble, honest, and unbroken. When reporters reached out to her for comment, she didn't seek revenge or sympathy. Instead, she gave a statement that echoed everywhere. "I don't want punishment," she said. "I want change." And with that, she began her next chapter, turning her pain into purpose. Using the global attention her story had gained, Camilla founded Dignity for All, a non-profit foundation designed to change how the service industry treated people. Its mission was simple: teach empathy, not hierarchy. Her program trained hospitality workers to approach every guest with kindness, regardless of what they wore or how much they paid. The foundation also offered scholarships for underprivileged students hoping to work in hotels, encouraging them to see every visitor not as a paycheck, but as a person. Adrian backed the movement wholeheartedly, turning his own company into the first hotel chain to implement a respect-first policy. Under it, every employee, from cleaners to managers, underwent mandatory empathy and human rights training. Slowly, the Grand Meridian, once the stage of humiliation, became a symbol of redemption. But for those who had mocked her that day, the world had a long memory. Patricia, Jessica, and the others soon discovered that the internet doesn't forget. Their faces were captured in viral clips, their actions analyzed and condemned. Job interviews became impossible as employers recognized them instantly. No matter how many times they tried to move forward, the shadow of their cruelty followed them everywhere, a harsh reminder that every action has consequences. Months passed. The scandal faded from headlines, replaced by other stories, but its message remained alive. Then, 3 months later, Camilla returned to the Grand Meridian, not as a victim, but as a woman who had turned humiliation into hope. She wore the same clothes as that fateful day, the same jeans, the same cozy cardigan, the same sneakers. She wanted to prove that dignity never needed diamonds to shine. When she entered the lobby, the atmosphere was different, softer, warmer. The new receptionist smiled the moment she saw her. "Welcome to the Grand Meridian, Mrs. Rodriguez," she said with genuine warmth. "It's an honor to meet you. Your foundation's training changed my life. I used to think this job was about serving guests. Now I know it's about respecting people." Camilla smiled back, her eyes glistening. That simple moment, that simple act of kindness, made every tear and every heartbreak worth it. The walls that had once echoed with laughter at her expense now carried the weight of compassion. Guests in the lobby recognized her and applauded quietly, not for her fame, but for her strength. Later that evening, as she stood on the hotel's balcony overlooking the city, Adrian joined her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "You turned pain into purpose," he whispered. She smiled. "Maybe it was meant to happen," she said softly. "Sometimes the world needs to be reminded that humanity is still the most valuable currency." Her words spread far beyond that hotel, quoted in news articles, speeches, and classrooms. Camilla had become a voice of change, not through anger, but through grace. In an interview months later, when asked what she had learned from the experience, she gave an answer that would be remembered for years to come. "You never know who you're judging. But it shouldn't matter. Treat people with kindness not because of who they are, but because of who you are. Respect costs nothing, but it's worth everything." And with that, the woman who had once been dragged across a cold marble floor walked forward, not as a symbol of pity, but as proof that dignity, once lost, once defended, once shared, can change the world.